Okay, today we're going to dive into a really huge idea. The collapse of a fundamental assumption that's been shaping our world for centuries. It's an idea so deep, we barely even notice it's there. But what happens when it starts to crumble?
This sentence right here, this is basically the foundation of the modern world. It's this powerful, unspoken premise that you are here, and the rest of the world is just out there.
So we're going to call this the illusion of separation. And a great way to think about it is like an operating system, It's just running in the background of our entire civilization. It's this core belief that everything, you, me, nature, nations, are all just fundamentally distinct, separate things. And as we're about to find out, this operating system is, well, let's just say it's full of bugs.
All right, Section 1, a flaw in our reality. How on earth did this way of seeing the world get so deeply ingrained that we mistake it for reality itself?
Well, it starts really early. Our language itself trains us to slice and dice the world. We learn about me versus you, us versus them, what's inside our minds and what's outside in the world. Now, these distinctions are useful, of course, but over time they harden into what feels like this fundamental truth, creating this deep sense of being an isolated self in a foreign world.
And here's the thing, this wasn't some random accident of language. As we'll see in Section 2, this worldview was deliberately constructed, brick, by some of the most influential thinkers in history.
It really kicks off with thinkers like Descartes, who basically told us our true self was just this solitary mind, totally separate from our bodies and the world. Then you get Newton, who painted this picture of the universe as a giant machine made of separate parts. This kind of thinking, well, it directly fueled the Industrial Revolution, turning nature into a big warehouse of resources for us to exploit. And finally, economics gave us the ultimate model, the rational, self-interested individual. As you can see on the timeline, piece by piece, the wall of separation was built.
And the consequences, the fallout from this thinking is literally all around us. When we see nature as a separate thing, we get deforestation. When we pretend our economic actions don't have wider impacts, well, we get pollution. We draw these lines on maps and then act all surprised when our biggest problems, like a pandemic or climate change, don't respect them. And we champion the isolated individual, then wonder why we're facing epidemics of loneliness.
But, and this is a huge but, here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. The very same discipline that helped build this worldview, science, is now the one systematically tearing it down. It's discovering that reality isn't a collection of things at all, but an intricate web of relationships.
So the fundamental shift in perspective is this. We're moving from seeing the world as a bunch of separate billiard balls bouncing around in empty space to seeing it as a single, inseparable field of energy, where everything is fundamentally interconnected.
And this goes all the way down to the deepest quantum level. Physics has discovered this wild phenomenon called entanglement. You can link two particles so that what happens to one instantly affects the other, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. Einstein himself famously called it spooky action at a distance. I mean, come on, that's a fundamental challenge to the very idea of separation.
Then you look at ecology, and it's telling the exact same story. There are no independent organisms. A tree isn't just a tree, right? It's a node in a massive network, connected to fungi in the soil, to insects, to birds, to the climate itself. Every single living thing exists only because of its relationships with everything else.
And even that final fortress of separation, our own mind, turns out it's not separate either. Neuroscience is showing us that our consciousness isn't some ghost in the machine. Our minds are shaped by our bodies, by our environment, our tools, our relationships. The self isn't a thing. It's a process that's constantly being built through connection.
And this quote just grounds it all in an undeniable reality. A puff of smoke from a factory in one country becomes part of the atmosphere for absolutely everyone. Our planet's systems, they don't care about our maps, they don't care about our politics. They show us, in no uncertain terms, that we are all part of one interconnected whole.
So, where does this leave us? What does all this actually mean? Well, as this old illusion collapses, it presents us with both a terrifying crisis and a really profound invitation.
The crisis is this. Our systems, our institutions, our whole way of life is built on an outdated map. As you can see here, we're using the logic of separate national borders to fight global pandemics. We build these economies that ignore externalities only to be completely shocked when supply chains are all interdependent. We champion the radical individual, and then we find ourselves facing these epidemics of loneliness. Our map simply no longer matches the territory, not even close.
But that crisis is also an invitation. It's a chance to, finally grow up as a species.
It's inviting us to adopt an ethic of care for the entire web of life, not just for ourselves. It's asking us to design economies and political systems that actually reflect the reality of interconnection. And it's calling for a massive shift in our whole posture, from trying to dominate some separate thing called nature to participating humbly within it.
So this brings us to the final, and maybe the most personal, part of this whole story. What does it actually feel like to live in this connected reality? And this is absolutely crucial. Embracing connection doesn't mean we all become the same. It is not about losing our individuality. Just think of a healthy forest. It's a single, unified ecosystem because it's made of countless, completely distinct organisms. That very diversity is what makes the whole thing strong. This quote, I think it just captures the entire shift perfectly. For centuries, we've been living behind this imaginary wall, believing we were separate from the world. And the big revelation is that the wall was never really there. We've been standing in the garden all along.
And that leaves us with one final thought. The old story of separation is ending. A new story, one of profound connection, is just waiting to be written. The only question left is the one we all have to answer. What happens when we finally decide to start tending the garden together?